I'm here with Traci Talasco, a Brooklyn artist who donated a great piece to our fundraiser. It's part of the models or drawings, of wall drawings, I think she calls them. But tell me more about that.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Monica. The piece that I donated, I would call it an architectural model or a wall drawing. I'm mostly an installation artist, and I do a lot of work about social political ideas that deal with balance and imbalance in society in general. But the work that I donated to you guys was it's sort of a series of dealing with balance and imbalance with architectural parts. But I do a lot of different interactive pieces mostly, and in my studio, build a lot of small scale models or then working models because I do some site specific work. So I sort of create a lot of models. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this actually was a large project I did for a solo show at the Bronx Community College. They had invited me for Women's History Month last year, and this was a piece called "A False Sense of Security." It had 20 of these silk screen panels, and it had all of these little toy guns that were embedded in the patterns that you can see here in the detail. There were 340 of them because it was based on gun violence statistics, and that was actually the number of deaths from mass shootings from the previous year, because that's when we have the statistics from the year prior. But because it was on a university campus, I really wanted to make it site specific and tie in that number. These were just some other pictures here, and you can see in this view here around the pieces, it was a large drawing with pencil on tracing paper. And I wanted to use this damask wallpaper pattern because I was really thinking about this kind of domestic space and how it was a very subtle piece. People just thought it was something decorative and pretty at first, and they couldn't really tell until they got close that there were all these guns kind of embedded in the patterns. And from the view of all the pieces together, it's loosely in the shape of a weapon, of a gun, but it's a bit abstracted. So I was really, and I wanted to use just black and white because I was thinking about the morality of the issue and sort of the sort of being black and white. So that was one of these works in the show.
And I like that the title to a false sense of security.
Yeah, false sense of security. Really, just thinking about these weapons are meant to protect us, but they're being used to kill way too many people. Let's see, what else can I tell you about here? This actually was an erasable piece called Erasing the Past. I can show you a little video, but this had to do with, on their campus is the Hall of Fame, and there were two Confederate statues that were removed, Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. And I drew, it's like a 10-foot column that was drawn in graphite on the wall. And over the course of the exhibition, people erased it. And I was thinking about this act of removal and how traces from the past persist in the future. And I have a little video I could show here. This is just a few seconds here. You can see of people erasing. But it was interesting because people started like erasing graffiti patterns and all kinds of things into the column. Which I wasn't expecting. But yeah, so I guess it was sort of like a reflective piece of thinking about, what's in the history books, what's left out of the history books, how are things, erased over time, and what's left behind.
Right, and that was probably before the discussion about all the removal of the monuments, right?
I mean, this was just after the two monuments were removed. So what was left they left the pedestal, which I thought was really interesting because, so you knew that something was there previously because there was an empty pedestal. And I was thinking about these, sort of the void, lives lost. And, with this piece, when it was erased, there was this white space left in the wall with the interior paint around it. So there was this void, but just sort of, but there were also, you couldn't really erase it. And I guess that was what I was thinking about with this idea, is how obviously, yes, 100% remove the monuments. But what I'm saying is that we can't forget our past, because it's just removing them doesn't erase what's happened, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So the eraser marks, pieces of the pencil, there's still some traces that are left behind.
It's beautiful.
And then these were some interesting, I did different scratch and sniff work. I'm going to show you, I did this at the Edward Hopper Museum in Nyack. It was called The Itch of Memory. And this was thinking about domestic space and the fact that this used to be, it's a museum now, but it used to be Edward Hopper's childhood home. And this work is called The Itch of Memory. And there were these different spots of the house where I had these custom printed silk screened papers and patterns cut away, and they smelled like different things. This one was apple pie and cinnamon. This was lemonade and cotton candy. It's sort of thinking about like these tropes of Americana. And this was a piece that went up the staircase to Edward Hopper's bedroom, and it was toothpaste and soap scented. So it's really thinking about all of these, the fact that it used to be a domestic space, and how, you know, like the stories and the memories of that. So they're all scratch and sniff. It actually was funny. I found a place that manufactures like a scratch and sniff slurry. It's almost like a paint, and you can have custom scents made of any scent that you want. And so it works on porous surfaces. So I could paint it on wood, I could paint it on these papers. And then I cut away the patterns because I was just thinking about the nature of memory itself and how things fade and change over time. So the patterns kind of fall apart and disintegrate. This went down a staircase. And this, yeah, go ahead.
Paper that are repasted on the wall, pasted on.
Exactly. So they were printed papers that were, it almost became like wallpaper then on the wall that was scented. Yeah. And this one was rosemary.
And then you could scratch it and you would get this.
Yeah. It was very strong. Actually, once, and it lasted, the smell, I have to say, because it was the slurry, it was like a concentrated mix. So it didn't smell until you scratched it, but it was very, very visceral. Like you could really smell it. And this one was rosemary. So just thinking about like home cooked meals, domestic rituals, those kinds of things.
And also when you scratch it, would you actually destroy the piece in some ways, or would it not?
No, it doesn't destroy the piece at all.
Okay.
It doesn't destroy the piece at all. And there's one other piece I was going to tell you about, just because this was a huge project that I did called Rub Me the Wrong Way. This was, I did this with the Brooklyn Arts Council. It's made out of 4,000 pieces of sandpaper. It was up for 9 months. It gradually wore down over time. And this had to do with female identity, like stereotypes of female identity and like domestic roles and how we're expected to do it all. And so this, viewers would walk through the space and the sandpaper gradually wore down. So there were the tiles on the floor, the wallpaper pattern was laser cut, but the rest was hand cut. So it was the molding, the tile floor, and this was like a 26-foot hallway space. And the reason why I was interested in this space is because the Brooklyn Arts Council, it also, their gallery space was almost like a walk-through space, and they had offices on the side where they used to be in Dumbo. So what was interesting about it was it got a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people walked through it, but it also had a workplace connected to it. So we're sort of thinking about you know, these ideas of female identity and kind of this outdated notion of women in domestic roles. And it was very funny though, because it was such a subtle piece that I remember on opening night, people would come in and they'd like walk right through it. They'd be like, "Where's the piece?" I'm like, "You just walked through the piece. You were just in it." So, and it was so like sticky at first. It was very tactile because, you know, I used different grades of sandpaper, but it was really grippy at first. So you would kind of like your shoes, like you could feel it. It was almost like walking in molasses in a way. And then gradually, you know, it started to wear away and became, you know, it would like gather stuff from your shoes. The irony of this is the gallery assistants ended up having to like vacuum the space because it would also like collect dirt and things from people's shoes. And it was so labor intensive, and it sort of spoke to that idea of domestic labor. So that was kind of like a little bit of ironic humor at the end when we realized we had to clean the space.
Oh, is that like, can I see a close-up? Do you have one? Which is like
here's one where you can see some of the, right, so this is like the tile floor pattern here. Let me see some other, if there's some other, here you can see the pattern on the paper here.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, so it was the molding was wooden molding that was covered in sandpaper.
You also use this like Colonial or whatever, you know, like pattern all the time, right? It's probably also on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I think a lot about this idea of the American dream and what does that really mean, because they're, like I said, my work overall deals with balance and imbalance in society, like in different political ways. So yeah, I think I stick to you know, patterns and things that relate to home and domesticity. And this I wanted to feel a little bit outdated. You know, it's like this colored brown, but of course that's the color of sandpaper. But it does have that very like outdated feeling.
Right. Like a fake wood on top of the wood.
Exactly. It's almost, yeah, like a facade in a way, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
That's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So I don't know what else I have here that I can show you. Oh, and this was a project called Tread Carefully. And in this one, I was thinking about how I could take this very simple act of walking across the room and make it unnecessarily complicated. So floorboards themselves became an obstacle course. This actually was never fully realized, this project. It's just, I have a model in my studio. I've been itching to do this piece. But my idea is that as multiple people walk through the space together, it becomes this awkward type of dance. And I've been thinking a lot about this idea lately, just in our current COVID times. You know, how we're sort of tiptoeing around these pitfalls, how we have to be socially distant and very careful around one another, and just these types of interactions that we're having with people right now that feel, you know, very distant because they have to be. But yeah, I liked this idea of taking this simple thing that we don't think about, like walking across the room, and how everything now suddenly is way more complicated than it needs to be.
Right.
So it's a playful piece, but it also sort of speaks about social relationship, or an awkward kind of, you know, getting your way across the space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also cool.
So there are just some images of that. Yeah, so I don't know what else to show you here.
Yeah, can we actually just really quickly, because it's a beautiful piece what you gave us for the fundraiser, but I know there's a whole series of them. Could we really quickly just see some of those?
Of course, let me just
find. We sold them on for the fundraiser, but I still think that they're really.
Yes. Yeah, so here are some of them here. This piece on the bottom was the one you had for the fundraiser. Actually, my collection is growing. I have some more in the studio. Actually, well, I'm wondering if I don't know if I have a picture of them. But yeah, so these are some of the other pieces that were from the series. And like I said, it's a growing collection. But I guess these are ways of me visualizing in an abstract way these different concepts of balance and imbalance. Mm-hmm. So I almost imagine these as drawings on the wall, and just sort of playing with the different architectural model parts and arrangements. So these are really more formal pieces that talk about that concept of balance and imbalance. And I'm also really interested in color, which is odd because a lot of sculptors shy away from color completely. But I do feel like I use a lot of bright pops of color in my sculptures and installations. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to support you guys. And I love the work that you're showing. So thank you very much, Monika. I appreciate it.
Mhm.